The power of quiet confidence. The power of quiet confidence. Quiet confidence can express itself, if you've ever encountered it, as almost a smugness. Have you ever been in a situation where you have been panicking at something that's been going on, and then someone else in the situation encounters the same anxiety, but with a quiet confidence? You can almost see the image in your mind, can't you? A kind of wry smile on the face, a wink of the eye, a quiet confidence in the face of anxiety. Now, where does that quiet confidence often come from? If you've encountered that in a situation where you've faced panic, but someone else has faced the same situation, is quietly confident. That confidence often comes from secret knowledge, doesn't it? They know something you don't know. You're panicking because you see the data and you think, this situation has all gone wrong. But someone else sees a little bit more than just the vantage point that you hold. And they can see it's all going to work out. It's all going to be okay. And so they approach the same difficulty with a quiet confidence. Psalm 46, one of the prayers of the sons of Korah. We're working through these at the beginning of the year to experience spiritual renewal, to find ways to pray and to relate to God in our desperate and difficult world. Psalm 46 comes to us as a prayer of the sons of Korah, as a prayer of quiet confidence. And it helps us, these words help us find our way towards the courage that we need to face the world that we live in. See, even as we hear from our friends, our missionary friends this morning, we're reminded of our need for courage in our world. Whether it be in sharing the good news of Jesus in difficult and dangerous places, or whether it be in facing family crisis, or other relational strains, or pressures in our workplace, or even just the strength to get through the day with the hanging cloud of depression weighing down upon our minds. If we're going to survive in this difficult world, and if we're going to thrive in this world, we need to find our way towards courage. But courage, quiet confidence, it's easy to admire and it's hard to acquire, isn't it? That's what I've learned about courage. I love it when I see it, and I admire people who have it. The great heroes of the stories we tell are heroes who are marked by courage. It's easy to admire and say, wow. But how do we actually acquire? How do we get hold of some of that courage for our lives? It may be courage, like I said, for one of the situations that you're facing in your life today. It may be courage in your walk with God to even step into new depths of relationship with him. Even these last few weeks in Grace Church, if you've been part of us, God has been doing a new work in many of us and calling us to new confession and to new honesty about the state of our spiritual lives in order to experience his renewal. But even that takes courage to move on from a position of stuckness where we've been, to step into new joy and peace in Christ, and to let go of some of the sins and fears of the past. It all takes courage. So how do we acquire courage? How do we acquire courage? How do we get hold of it? Our world, so full of military violence and economic instability and political turbulence, it all produces an atmosphere of fear and anxiety in us. How do we get hold of courage? Psalm 46 is written not in the context of a serene sanctuary. The sons of Korah were part of the priesthood of Israel. And so they spent much of their time ministering to God in the place of worship. But they actually write this psalm, it seems, not from a serene sanctuary, but from devastation. Read their words that Mary read, and we see mountains falling into the heart of the sea. waters roaring, mountains quaking, nations in uproar, kingdoms falling. Everything is against them. And yet, if we were to meet the sons of Korah, who would we meet? We would meet people with that wry smile and that wink in their eye, with that quiet confidence. Why? What is it they know? What is it they know that gives them the ability to stand in the face of a difficult world with quiet confidence? What is it they know? This psalm invites us to know what they knew, and to, in what they knew, discover courage and confidence. We're going to see 3 sources of courage in this psalm. 3 ways that we can enter into quiet confidence and live in this turbulent world with a peace that passes understanding. So, first of all, what did they know? Well, they knew God was their refuge. I want to ask you this morning, do you know God is your refuge? Do you know God as your refuge? Sometimes our lives are so frantic and so busy, aren't they, that what prayer looks like in the midst of our lives is like a gasping of breath. And that's what we see, I think, in Psalm 46. Before they enter into this world of turbulence, the very first thing they do, like a swimmer, that before you go down into the water, you... That's what verse 1 is. It's a gasp of breath. I'm about to go to roaring waters, to the world that's falling around. What will I breathe? God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Into the water. And there's a lesson for us here. Before we enter into, as we're entering into the difficulties of our world and our lives, God has given himself to us as a refuge. And that can fill our lungs with what we need to thrive and to survive, to have quiet confidence in the midst of the storm. Before they launch into a scene of disruption, mountains falling, earth giving way, waters roaring, all images in the biblical imagination that have to do with chaos and disorder. So if you think your life is chaotic, and if you think you've had disorder hit your life, you're in the company of the sons of Korah. But what did they have? They had this firm conviction, this deep breath that God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in these times of trouble. The picture of God as refuge is one of the most common metaphors used for God in the whole book of Psalms. This book of the ancient prayers of God's people, and one of their favorite images to help them relate to what God was for them is refuge, sometimes used as shelter. And in the days of the writers of the Psalms, the image of refuge and shelter came both in the midst of weather systems that very often were against them. Here in Wales, why do we need refuge and shelter? How many times have you run into a bus shelter whilst the rain has been pouring down? Because, you need a place to find security and dryness. But for them, it was often the polar opposite. A refuge and a shelter in the blazing heat of the midday sun was a place of shade and solace. But they also lived in societies that were in constant danger from military intimidation. And it seems like this psalm is written in particular in the context of war. And ask anyone in the tragedy of a war-torn country how precious a place of shelter and refuge is. A place of peace, a place of security, a place that guarantees survival in the midst of the chaos and the disorder. That is what God is like. He is a refuge and a shelter, an ever-present place of help in trouble. In our family at the moment, one of the first things that happens in the morning as Charlotte and I are waking up is we hear the whisperings. Theo, let's go and build a den. Let's go and build a den. Toby, let's go and build a den. And I'm a really tidy person. And so I have to hold back within me all the urges to say, boys, before you just wreck our sofa and living room, please just let's get breakfast in first. But morning after morning, we're going downstairs at the moment to a scene that looks like chaos and disorder in our lounge, but is actually the polar opposite. As they have constructed in this little corner, this little place of hiding and safety and security, this den. And it is, to me, a picture of our human instinct. We want a place to hide. We need a place of safety. We want a place of comfort. And getting the courage we need to face our world and our difficulties, getting the courage we need to witness for Jesus in a society that is increasingly hostile to the message of Jesus, does not come from having the strength in and of ourselves, from mustering up the kind of bravado to say, thick skin, I'm going to take on the world. That is not biblical courage. Biblical courage comes from hiding our souls in God, from finding him as our place of safety, from trusting in him alone. And friends, we have a refuge in this God because of Jesus. When Jesus died on the cross, he died outside of the city of Jerusalem, which to the people of Israel was a picture of refuge and shelter, security, walls from the intimidating enemies. But Jesus left the shelter and the refuge of Jerusalem, and he went to a hill where he was exposed for all to see. And he died in shame and in mockery. He was exiled. And he cried out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" It was as if he was forsaken by the sheltering refuge, the presence of God, because he was bearing all of our sins and our iniquity and our rebellion. He left the refuge in order to welcome us in. And because Jesus died on the cross, we have a refuge and a shelter in God. And we can say he is an ever-present help in times of trouble. What often comes when we face trouble is it brings out the worst in us, doesn't it? It brings out stress and it brings anger and anxiety. And we often sin more under stress than we do before we face stress. And we often think, therefore, I'm disqualifying myself from God's shelter and his refuge and his help. But the sons of Korah glimpse this good news reality that will come with Jesus, that it's not our merit that gets us God as our shelter. We don't run from a war-torn world and looking round in our pockets. Do we have enough to pay for the ticket to get into the shelter? Jesus paid the price for you to live your life under the refuge of God. It doesn't matter if this week, in the midst of the disorder and chaos, you have sinned greatly. If you trust in Jesus, he is your refuge. He is an ever-present help. And so, do you know God as your refuge? Are you at home with God? Is he like a familiar den to you? Where in prayer, when you face difficulty, instead of trying to muster up the strength, instead you can remember, I have a refuge in God. I have a place to run, a place to hide, a place where I am secure. They were courageous because they knew God as their refuge. Secondly, they were courageous because they knew what was going on in heaven. And I want to ask you this morning, secondly, do you know what's going on in heaven? Do you know what is going on in heaven? What's that got to do with courage, you might ask? I can see how if God is my shelter, if he's going to pledge himself to me to be my help, and if I can run there for safety and security and know a God who loves me and is for me, I can kind of see the connection with courage. What's this all about? Do you know what's going on in heaven? Well, just look back at the Psalm 46, because there is an interesting and a jolting switch that comes in verse 4. From a scene of destruction and chaos, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. If you were just reading the Psalm from that verse, you would think, oh, what a lovely Psalm. We're thinking about gently flowing streams and rivers. But this is coming in the midst of desolations and uproar and kingdoms falling. What's going on? The sons of Korah look at their world and they see chaos and disruption and they gasp for breath and they say, "You're my refuge, Lord." And then it's as if, you ever been on an airplane and you climb above the clouds and you go from the stormy reality below and you, oh, wait a second, it's a perfectly peaceful day up here. That is what the sons of Korah are doing in prayer here. The world is in ruin. My life is facing difficulty. But if I just climb high enough up, I'm seeing a gentle stream. I'm seeing a holy city. I'm seeing the Most High God dwelling. Picture of just at ease. I'm seeing God within this city. And God helping at the break of day. What the sons of Korah do here is they gain a heavenly perspective, not just an earthly perspective. When we look at what is going on at our world politically, economically, when we look at what is going on in our lives relationally, and in every other aspect maybe of our life's existence, we may have many reasons for fear and anxiety and dread. But when we look at what's going on in heaven, and we see that God right now is sitting secure, he is on the throne, that he is not disrupted, he is not panicked, he is a God of that quiet confidence. He is a God of ultimate security and courage and serenity, because he knows that he is king. He is sovereign. He is working it all out. And if we can just get a vision of heaven, then in the midst of our crumbling world, we might be able to find fresh courage to face the day. It's a bit like what happens in the New Testament, where the Apostle Paul, who faced many difficulties, many trials, imprisonments and mockings for Jesus, he writes in Colossians 3, "Since you have been raised with Christ," he's talking to Christians who have put their trust in Jesus, and he says, when you put your trust in Jesus, it's like you've been raised up to this new life. Since you've been raised with him, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds above, not on earthly things, for you died and your life is hidden with Christ in God. What Paul is saying here is that our truest life, if we trust in Jesus, is not blown about by the winds of the economy. Our truest life is not blown about by the winds of ill health or good health. It's not blown about by the winds of political instability. Our truest life is hidden, think den again, with Christ in God. We are completely and utterly and indestructibly secure if we trust in Jesus. Our true life is there in heaven with him. It's there. But Paul writes elsewhere that we have been seated with Christ in heavenly places. What I really want you to get, friends, is we're not talking about heaven future, we're talking about heaven now. That there is a reality for those who trust in Jesus, that the moment we place our trust in Jesus, our name is written into the book of life with ink that cannot be rubbed out. And so we're secure. And so whatever happens, if you walk out today and get hit by a bus and your whole life falls about in an instant, I know this is a morbid twist, but your whole life gets turned upside down or ended in an instant, The truest thing about you, that you are a child of God, is secure. It cannot be taken. If you get home today and discover fraud has been committed against you, your bank account is completely empty, you might have reason for anxiety. You tumble and waves and the mountains have fallen around me. But your truest life is safe. You cannot be rubbed out from the kingdom of God. You cannot be unadopted from God's family. You are secure and safe in Jesus. And that gives us reason to be courageous. Because it means no matter what this world does to me, they cannot take from me what is most fundamentally true of me. No matter what the world does to me, they cannot take from me what is most fundamentally true of me. And they cannot take from me that which brings me ultimate peace and happiness and joy. That is completely secure in the city of God. In the city of God where the Most High dwells. God is in the midst of her. God is guarding us, around us like that shield, like that refuge. Because he sits there secure, confident, sovereign, we can have peace. We can be assured not only that we are secure with him, the one who is completely secure, but we can be assured, as it says in verse 5, God will help her at the break of day. If you belong to Jesus, God has pledged to be your helper for all your days. And you might be in night now, and the darkness around you might be thick, and it might look impenetrable. But this is the promise. God will help you at break of day. Help is on the way. And that's where quiet confidence comes from, doesn't it? You can stand in the face of anxieties and you can look with that smile on your face and say, everything's falling apart right now, but God will help me. Help is on the way. Started the year with this quote. I think I should get it tattooed to me because I love this quote. The future is as bright as the promises of God. William Carey. The future is as bright as the promises of God. I need that. I am such a catastrophizer. I can play out the script in my mind of how something is going to go wrong. And I can take it to the ultimate conclusion of dread and difficulty. But if I can get into my bones, God will help her at break of day. The future, no matter what it contains, is as bright as God's promises. And he has promised me good. Then I can smile in the face of the difficulty. I can stand with quiet confidence. Do you know what is going on in heaven right now? He is enthroned, he is secure, and your truest life is safe with him. Do you know that? If you do, you can go out of this place punching the air. Got courage. Finally, what did the sons of Korah know? Which gave them the quiet confidence, which meant they stood in the face of a dark and difficult world with a smile on their face. Do you know that there is a plan unfolding? The psalm ends from verse 8 to 11. He's rehearsed that God is my refuge. He has seen the city of God. And then he comes back down to earth. And he sees that there are desolations that are going on earth, but God is at work in the midst of this. Come and see what the Lord has done. Desolations he has brought on the earth, but what's he ultimately doing? Verse 9, he makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the earth. I will be exalted among the nations. God's ultimate desire is to bring the city of God, where all is well, to the cities of earth. And one day, the Bible says that plan will be fulfilled, that there will be a day where God makes all things new, where wars cease and spears are broken and the shields are put aside, because God renews the earth and restores all things. And he will be exalted in the nations. And right now, what is going on in that unnamed nation today, in the midst of the difficulty and the turbulence and the uproar and the kingdoms falling, what is going on? God is exalting himself. God is making his plan advance. God is beginning the work of restoring all things through the gospel of Jesus. The gospel of Jesus, the good news of the death and resurrection of Jesus, it is the seed, the kernel of what is ultimately to come. And every person who places their trust in Jesus, our hearts, this is literally the same language. The Bible uses the same language as to what will happen to the earth at the end. He will make all things new. Where has he done it first? In us. The old has passed away, the new has come. He has begun to make a new people. A plan is unfolding. And we can have courage because this unfolding plan, we are assured, will come to its climactic fulfillment. Behind the scenes of a world that has gone to pot, of a world that sits in chaos and disorder, behind the scenes, God is working out his plan of peace. And nothing, we sang it, didn't we? There is nothing that can stop our God. There is nothing that can stop our God. So friends, in the meantime, what is it left for us to do? If God is our refuge, and if heaven is at peace, and I am secure with God there, and if God is working out his unfolding plan behind the scenes, what is there left for me to do? Be still. Be still. Put aside your anxieties and your concerns. Take a breath. Put down your worries and your catastrophizing. Be still and know that I am God. That's what there's left for us to do. And what our world needs more than anything else, in a world of all the darkness and difficulty of Psalm 46, our opportunity as believers in Jesus is to model to the world a peace from another world. To be a people of quiet confidence, to be a people who are still, who can face disastrous situations and who can weep. Don't forget the Psalms of the sons of Korah. If you weren't here for Psalm 42, there is plenty of room for weeping in the Christian life, for lamenting what is going on. We can weep. We can cry out to God. Psalm 44, where are you, Lord? But ultimately we find our way towards that quiet, confident smile in the face of it all. God is on the throne. His plan is being outworked. He will bring peace. He will make good of this situation. And it's good news that we don't partner with God in bringing his kingdom to our world by rushing around in frantic panic. We partner with God in bringing his kingdom to the world in trusting in him and walking in the peace that passes understanding. So do you know, here's the secret knowledge I give you today, friends. The secret knowledge that gives you quiet confidence. And it's not secret. It's as plain as the scriptures. God is your refuge. Heaven is secure. There's a plan being worked out. Next time you face your difficulties, why don't you try and just tell yourself those three things? God is my refuge. Heaven is secure. There's a plan being worked out. Let's be still for a moment.